Hey guys, so in this video I want to talk a little bit about the changing phases of the moon and exactly what causes the moon to change phase. So we talked about a couple basic motions of the solar system. First, the Earth spins on its axis, and that causes everything to rise in the morning and set in the evening from east to west every day. We talked about another motion, how the Earth orbits the sun once a year, and how you combine that with the tilt of the axis, and we see seasons happen. But the third most obvious thing that happens if you watch the sky over any period of time is that the moon is changing. And in particular, two things are changing with the moon. First, when you look out one day, then you look at the next, then you look at the next, you see it's pretty obvious that the moon's shape is changing from night to night. If you look over the course of a week like you're doing in your lab, then that becomes very obvious. But another, a little more subtle thing, but it's actually equally important, in my opinion, it's actually a more important effect, is that the moon is not visible at the same time every night. Over the course of the year, or actually over the course of the month, the moon becomes visible from the early hours in the evening to the late evening, to the early morning, to the afternoon, and then back to the early evening again. And these things are all due to a very important effect, that the Earth isn't just spinning on its own, and the Earth isn't just orbiting the sun on its own. But the whole way through, the Earth is also orbiting with a companion. The moon orbits the Earth as the Earth orbits the sun. So I wanted to try to demonstrate this and try to recreate exactly what we're seeing with the moon and why we see the moon change in phase and what time of day it's up. So this is going to be a little bit silly here, but so usually in the classroom I actually have a flashlight and it's the sun for afternoon, and I have a big round moon globe and I get to walk around with the moon and everything. It doesn't quite work here. If I turn the lights out and tried to do this with a flashlight, you couldn't see anything. So what's the point of video? But instead I have this cool little multicolored ball. And this is going to demonstrate the moon, and the moon is going to orbit around me. My head is now the sun. Sorry, my head is now the Earth. So the moon is going to orbit around my head, and I'm going to try to explain exactly what I'm seeing from my point of view here on Earth. So a couple things to start off with. First, imagine the sun is way over here. So the sun is coming from way over here, and the sunlight is coming in at this angle. The sunlight is coming this way, right here. And it's going to be striking me, it's going to be striking the moon in this direction. So we've very conveniently colored this ball so that the front side of it, the side that's always facing the sun, is going to be bright. Unfortunately, the ball was yellow when we did this. If I were to do it again, I would actually choose a white ball because the moon is obviously white when the sun hits it. But the dark side is black or dark. And so as the sun hits the moon, it's going to light up the front side of the moon, whichever side of the moon is always facing the sun, and the other side is always in the shadow. It's the Pink Floyd side of the moon, the dark side of the moon. And one other important thing, does the moon give off any light on its own? Or do any of the planets actually give off any light? No. The only reason we can see the moon in the sky is that when we're looking at it, the light from the sun is hitting the surface and it's bouncing off and coming to us here on Earth. The moon has what's called a very high albedo. It's a very light-colored surface. The majority of light that hits the moon bounces off and we can see it from any other angle. But if there was no sun, we would not be able to see the moon. The moon does not give off its own light. So if we're looking at the dark side of the moon, it looks dark. It's not giving off any light because we're not looking at the side that's being lit up by the sun. So I'm just going to go through the course of one lunar cycle. By the way, how long does the lunar cycle last? About 4 weeks, or roughly about 28 days. So it's kind of important we can divide the cycle into 4 little chunks. So just watch what happens as I let the moon orbit around me. Alright, so I'm starting off here, remember the sun is in this direction. I'm starting off at the beginning of the cycle. I'm looking at the back side of the moon, the side that's entirely shaded. So my view right now is of an entirely dark moon, and this is what we call the new moon. When you're seeing the moon completely shaded, when none of it is light, that's the beginning of the lunar cycle, the new moon. Now, I'm going to start to let the moon orbit around me. As I do this, it's becoming very apparent to me that I'm starting to see some of the lit up side of the moon. Now, all of what I'm seeing is not lit up by any means. Actually, just a very small portion of it is lit up. But the portion that's lit up is making a little sliver shape, a little crescent shape, right along there. So what I'm seeing right now is just this little section of lit up moon, and the rest I'm seeing is dark right now. So what I'm seeing is a crescent moon. And in fact, as the moon goes from night 0, night 1, night 2, night 3, night 4, I'm seeing more and more of that crescent shape build. It's getting larger from night to night to night. And that's what we call a waxing crescent. When it's crescent shaped, but each night it's getting bigger. Now if I go 1 full week, roughly 7 days, a quarter of the lunar cycle, watch what happens. I'm seeing the dark side. Now I'm seeing a crescent side on the right. Now exactly 1/4 of the way, I'm seeing exactly what you guys are seeing here. I'm seeing the lit up side, which again is still facing the sun, but my view is exactly half lit up on the right side and exactly half darkened on the left side. So I've gone from new moon, where it's completely dark, to crescent shaped to half lit up. This is what we call first quarter moon. It makes sense to call it first half, but the half isn't necessarily describing how long around the orbit it is. We call it a first quarter because it's exactly 1/4 of the way around the orbit here. Now I'm going to let it keep on going here. Now, more than a week into the orbit, now what I'm seeing here is the majority of my view of the moon is of the lit up side. I'm still seeing some of the shaded side, or I guess you could say I'm not seeing all the moon, but most of what I'm seeing is lit up. There's a little bit of shading still on the left side, so the right-hand side is lit up here. More than half the moon that I'm seeing is lit up. And the term for this is a gibbous moon. Gibbous, G-I-B-B-O-U-S. If you rearrange gibbous, big, it kind of makes sense. But so right now I'm seeing a gibbous moon each night from night 7, night 8, night 9, 10, 11, 12. Each night I'm seeing more and more of it illuminated. So we say it's still a waxing gibbous this time. And now, if I go back here, if I go 2 full weeks from the beginning of the new moon, first quarter, full moon. And remember, it's always the sun-facing side that's lit up. Right now, it's gone halfway around the orbit. I'm looking at exactly the side that's being lit up by the sun. This is what we know as a full moon. Right now, the only thing it can do, if we wait one more night, the only thing it can do as it keeps going around me is it can start to get less and less illuminated. So it's at 100% illumination. Now it's at 90% illumination for me. I guess you can't really see that, but now it's 80% illumination. I'm seeing still the majority of it lit up, but this time it's the left-hand side that's lit up. That's my left-hand side there. It's lit up. I'm seeing the lit up side on the left, but I'm now beginning to see more and more of the shaded side as well. And if we go 3/4 of the way through the orbit, now my view is exactly the opposite of what you're seeing from outside of the Earth. My view from the Earth is of the lit up side, exactly half is lit up, and exactly half of it is dark. So I call this a third quarter moon, when the left-hand side is lit up from my point of view. A third quarter moon because it's gone 1/4, 1/2, 3/4 of the way around the orbit, and the left-hand side is lit up. So it's a last quarter, is another way to say it. An easy way to remember that, the left-hand side is lit up, the last quarter. So last, left. I think that, yeah. So last and left. Last quarter is lit up on the left-hand side. Now finally, if I finish the orbit here, I'm going to let it keep on going. Now most of what I'm seeing from my point of view is the darkened side of the Earth, of the moon, the shaded side of the moon. I'm seeing a little stripe of the lit up side on the left, a little crescent shape. And as it's waning, that's what's going on now. Each night it's getting smaller and smaller from my point of view. It's getting smaller, so it's a waning crescent. And now if we continue all the way through, back to new moon, where I'm seeing it entirely darkened. So I'm just going to write the phases as we go along here. Let's see. I hope you can see this. All right, cool. So new moon, I'm seeing entirely the dark side. So that's just simply a darkened moon. You typically won't even see this in the sky because it's going to be very close to the sun. We're seeing the shaded side, and we're being blinded by the sun at the same time. But if you could actually observe this, you're going to see that you're just looking at the dark moon. Now as we go around here, now again I'm seeing a crescent shape on the right-hand side. So best way to draw that is something like this, a crescent shape on the right-hand side. And again, we call this a waxing crescent. See that? Yes. So a waxing crescent moon when we're seeing it lit up on the right-hand side. To first quarter, the exact view that you guys have right there. So lit up exactly halfway on the right. Going on from first quarter, now I'm seeing more than half of it lit up, and it's still on the right-hand side. So here's how I'm going to draw that. I'm going to draw the full moon, and then I'm going to shade in part of it on the left. So we're still seeing the moon lit up on the right-hand side, but it's not fully illuminated. And so it's waxing gibbous. If you can't see the spelling, you can just look in your textbook. So waxing gibbous here, lit up again on the right-hand side, but it's shaded a little bit to my left. On to the full moon. Obviously, this is pretty clear. Now that we're more than halfway around the orbit here, now we're starting to see less and less every night. So again, the term for that is waning. It's waning, it's getting smaller each night. So now I'm seeing a gibbous moon, more than half full, but each night, night 15, night 16, night 17, each night around the orbit, I'm seeing less and less of it. So it's, again, gibbous, it's more than half full, but now it's lit up on the left side, so I'm going to shade in the right a little bit. And again, that's called a waning gibbous. So waning, there we go. Waning gibbous, I'm seeing more than half it full, but I'm still seeing a little shading on the right, up to the exact opposite of what you're seeing. So again, you're seeing it lit up on your right. But from my point of view, from the center of the Earth, it's lit up on the left. And so that's where we have this shape. That's exactly what I'm seeing. And that's called last quarter. So last quarter for me. Now, after last quarter, I'm seeing less than half, so that's when we have lit up on the left. It's a waning moon, always lit up on the left when it's waning, and crescent shaped. And then back to new. So hopefully you can see that. Hopefully you can see that. But we're going again from new to waxing crescent, first quarter, waxing gibbous. And the thing to know about this, any of the waxing phases, including the first quarter, any of the waxing phases are always lit up on the right. Going on any of the waning phases after full moon, waning gibbous, last quarter, waning crescent, all of those are lit up on the left. So here's a way to remember that. It's the left-hand side, left and last. It's pretty clear. So that's why I prefer last quarter as opposed to third quarter. But the left-hand side for a waning gibbous or last quarter or a waning crescent is always lit up on the left. On the other side, it doesn't quite work as well, the right. So the waxing crescent, waxing gibbous, and the first quarter is lit up on the right. You can kind of try to make a poor mnemonic there. The first quarter, the right, doesn't work at all, but again, first quarter stressing the R. Easy way is just remember, left-hand side is when it's last quarter, or the last half of the orbit. From full, waning gibbous, last quarter, waning crescent, it's always lit up on the left-hand side until it hits new. Now I'm going to actually try to play a video to see exactly what this looks like from my point of view here. So I'll have to pause here 1 second. Okay, so I have the Mastering Astronomy page up here. Before I show the video, I want to mention one thing. By the way, what is the root word of the word month? It's actually just moon. Historically, we've defined months to be the same thing as one lunar cycle. So it's not a coincidence at all that one lunar cycle is roughly a month. Not exactly, but 4 weeks, or the 28-day cycle, is roughly what we've come to know as a month. So month, that's what it's based on. Okay, so anyway, the video I wanted to show you is actually part of a wider area on Mastering Astronomy that I think you guys should know about if you don't already. So here's the home page. Now I'm going to go to this thing over here that says Study Area. And this should open up a new window here. Now you guys all have access to this as well. And we're going to wait for it to load. But this is actually a really nice resource to be able to go and do some practice problems on your own. There's some quizzes set up. There's some tutorials. I'm going to reload this. Oh, here we go. Okay. So for each chapter, they have a whole set of the interactive figures and some extra, quizzes that you can take on your own, stuff like that. But I'm going to go to Chapter 2, which is what we're on right now. And you see how fast the wireless is here at Normandale. Okay, so anyway, now if you haven't seen this before, you can go through and you can look at some of the interactive figures. In the textbook, especially if you have the ebook, there's little links to all these extra interactive things that you can go online to check. This is what it's talking about here. And you can actually also go and work the tutorials just on your own. So even if they're not assigned as part of your online homework, you can always go and check out the Phase of the Moon tutorial, eclipses tutorial, stuff like that. You can even go and take some of the quizzes over the chapter on your own. You go to the concept quiz, and this will have a whole slew of questions that you can ask yourself. Which of the following is not true? But so you can answer these. It'll tell you whether you look. It'll tell you whether you're right or not. I believe. So anyway, let's go back to the chapter guide here. Now, okay. So I'm going to open up the link here that says how to simulate lunar phases, and this is exactly what I was just doing, but this time you actually get to see it from the point of view of Earth. So once this loads here, it's basically just the same thing as what I was doing, except with a real flashlight and a real person spinning around in a circle. It's a little bit dorky, but alright, so we see that there is the moon, and that person's head is simulating the view of the Earth. And it's going to zoom in and show you exactly what that person is seeing. So here we're at the first quarter. Now it's waxing gibbous, full. Now it's a waning gibbous, we're seeing more than half. Last quarter, slip on the left. Waning crescent, new moon. Waxing crescent, first quarter, it's lit up on the right. Waxing gibbous, full moon, waning gibbous, and you get the point. So this is exactly the same thing that we see with our moon every day, or every month. But this is exactly the explanation we have to show that the phases of the moon, the shape of the moon, changes over time. All right, so I'm going to post one more video about how to tell when the moon is going to be overhead at different phases. So tune in for that in a second.